Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. This is Boris Tizengauzen with you. Today is September 19th. There's a lot of interesting news. In this episode, how Magyar sanctions destroyed tens of thousands of units of Russian equipment, Russian oil exports suddenly collapsed, and the Kremlin's elite troops were simply flushed down the drain. A major scandal at the Russian-style Eurovision, import substitution didn't work out, and Donald Trump once again shocked everyone with his statements. Also about how Kim Jong Un is planning to take over the world. All this and more in today's episode. It's going to be interesting. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You could practically start every episode with the topic of Magyar's sanctions. The commander of Magyar's drone forces published a report on his first 100 days in the position. There's a lot of data, a lot of numbers, but I'd like to highlight two figures for you. So, 76,859 unique enemy targets destroyed or damaged. And that's just by the forces of the Drone Operations Group. An increase of 804% compared to the same result over the previous 100 days. And one more figure. 18,501 occupiers. This is over 100 days, an increase of 423% compared to the previous 100 days. Let me remind you, these numbers are only for those destroyed by drone systems. That's what it means to have the right person in the right place. I also noticed that all sorts of pro-Russian riffraff and traitors who fled immediately crawled out and started slinging mud at Magyar. Well, no wonder. I can just imagine how much this is burning them up in the swamps, seeing these numbers. And here are the consequences which are just beginning to show. Russia's maritime export of petroleum products collapsed by 18% in September. That's quite significant. This drop in petroleum product shipments was caused by unscheduled repairs at refineries and in the transport infrastructure. And then there are also the strikes on ports, for example on the port of Primorsk. So it's all very, very effective. Let me remind you, we are currently running an important fundraiser for our guardian angels, the combat medics from the 1st Separate Medical Battalion. Some of them, are still just kids themselves, but they're already saving lives while risking their own. These wonderful, beautiful young men and women have recorded a message directly for our channel. So let's support them, and I'll show you this video once again.
Combat medicine. It's not just about working in operating rooms.
It's constant large-scale construction, stabilization points, field hospitals, and other facilities for work. It's the ongoing risk of relocations, logistics, and vehicle repairs.
And all of this requires a constant supply of resources, meaning money. When a need arises, we don't have time for fundraising and long searches. We have to work quickly.
Together with Boris Tizengauzen's channel, we are announcing a fundraiser for our unit's needs. We are raising 800,000 hryvnias for the battalion's needs. Most importantly, building materials, equipment, vehicle repairs and consumables. This money will help us work efficiently and promptly meeting our needs.
We thank everyone who supports our unit. Your support helps save lives. Every time I watch this video, I understand why Putin will never defeat Ukraine. Because Ukraine is made up of these bright, strong people. Let's help our combat medics. The link to donate is in the description of this video and also in the comments. There is private, there is mono and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. And if you don't see the payment details, the QR code in the corner will take you directly to the donation page. In this case, your donation saves lives. This is not a figure of speech, it's meant literally. And I am grateful to each of you who helps our warriors. One more piece of news. The occupiers who tried to break through in Kupiansk were drowned in a pipe. This was announced by the command of the North Group. And of course, Kupiansk is an important target for the Russians. Many people understand this. The Russians had gathered their forces, but the gas pipeline they tried to use to enter the city was damaged and flooded along with those who were there. In other words, the Russians were drowned in that same pipe, according to the command statement. Then there were further attempts to cross the Oskil River by boat, but there they were hit a bit by artillery, mortars, and FPV drones. This time, I'm interested in the following question. The last time the Russians used a similar tactic, remember they also crawled through a pipe in the Kursk region. After that, they were gassed there. Afterwards, they took a piece of pipe, same diameter, cut off 16 meters in length, They placed this piece of pipe in Kaliningrad in front of a church. And they had this attraction. I'm not joking, that's really what they did. The initiator was the church's priest. And the attraction was called Feel the Spirit of the Russian Soldier, or something like that. Maybe it was called The Flow. And during some public festivities, Russians with their families would crawl through this pipe in front of the church, come out the other side, and that was how they were supposed to feel what it was like for the occupiers to crawl through the pipe. They didn't pump gas in there like they did for the occupiers, but they were supposed to experience it nonetheless. But that's not all. The attraction didn't end there. At the exit, they were greeted by Vaika Tsiganova, a singer who sang them a song. She sang a song that was written specifically for this attraction. I just can't even imagine how all of this... I mean, it's like some kind of zombie apocalypse. On one side, a toothless horde is crawling in. On the other side, they're climbing out, running around, and some priests are ringing bells. Then there's Tsiganova, either on a cross or with a cross, she always performs with crosses, belting out the song Truba. And I don't know, maybe there are bears in skirts riding bicycles around or something else. Some paratroopers are smashing bottles over their heads over there. Just imagine what kind of spectacle they're putting on for themselves. Well, it's Russia, fine. Why are we even surprised? But that's not even all. This song, Truba, was written by Tsiganova's husband, the singer's husband. And he just couldn't get the lyrics to work, no matter what he tried. And he says, I decided to talk to God, and I did, and then the lyrics came to me. So basically, he had some kind of revelation, and the lyrics just came to him. But I wouldn't be myself, not a level 100 nitpicker, if I hadn't found these lyrics for you. And allow me to read you a quatrain, actually two, of this masterpiece. In the forest belt, come spring, we will sprout as leaves, we will bloom with flowers along the plantings. If the motherland calls again, we will come, from the earth we will return for you. And now the chorus. Truba is a Russian word. Truba means truba. You're definitely going to get truba. Truba, truba, truba. Honestly, I don't know. It brings tears to my eyes. So she sings like, Russian occupiers will sprout as grass. In other words, they'll die. And if the motherland calls them, they'll supposedly rise from underground and come to help someone. So wholesome, so orthodox, just perfect. And as for Truba, that's a Russian word, you can be sure of it, it's just a masterpiece. It's like that line, autumn has come, the flowers have withered, I need no one but you. Well, what talents live there, right, on Russian soil? By the way, did you know that? So these talents don't go to waste, so to speak, so they aren't buried in the ground. Russia decided to launch its own Eurovision. That is, to achieve full import substitution, they decided, we'll have our own Eurovision with Blackjack and Saigonov. Just wait, we'll show you. And they're launching a contest called Intervision. And of course, it was important to show that performers from all over the world were coming together with their fans. Russia is not some kind of pariah state. But there was a problem with this. So, 23 countries agreed to participate. Some BRICS representatives and a few neighbors. Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Belarus, and also Serbia, South Africa, and Ethiopia. And it all started with major scandals. It turns out that the extras who were invited to the rehearsals started complaining that they were being treated like cattle. I don't really understand. Such a complaint in Russia is generally out of place. So, why did the extras start complaining? The thing is, these extras were special. In order to show that these performers had come from different countries with their fans, they needed the fans to look like they were actually from those countries. For example, South Africa, Ethiopia. And that's why they started recruiting extras from various universities like the People's Friendship University and so on. And of course, these extras were outraged. But that's not all. In order to show that this was truly a global competition, they absolutely had to find a representative from the USA. Naturally, all the reasonable people heard about it and said goodbye, but they did find someone. And the person who was supposed to represent the USA was, in quotes, the incredibly popular, according to Russia's Channel 1, singer Brandon Howard. Howard, in reality, released one album, and that was 15 years ago, and he has 31,000 subscribers on YouTube. This is the incredibly popular guy. the incredibly popular American performer, but even he ended up refusing to go. He weighed the reputational risks and declined, although I think they were offering pretty decent money. But you can't do without the USA. You need someone from the USA, so they found a replacement, a singer named Vasi. They made a deal with her, but only later found out that she has been performing at LGBT parades all over the world for many years. Well, what can you do? You can't just send her back, and as it turns out, I'm a bit of a stickler myself. I checked out Vasi's YouTube channel and she has 57 or 58,000 subscribers. She's also incredibly popular, but she's not a singer. She's an electronic music performer. This whole story is really about how there absolutely has to be someone from the USA, someone who will say that life in Russia is 100 times better. Like, I ran away from the USA, now I live here and it's just awesome. Just recently, this guy, some US citizen, ran away with his family and now they've sent him to the war, even though they promised they wouldn't. He wanted to get citizenship faster, but they sent him to the war instead. Whether he's alive or not, nobody knows. Some people are living the good life, like Steven Seagal, for example. These washed-up actors who would probably be performing, I don't know, maybe in some Michigan Children's Theater as Cipollino, playing some log or beating up Senor Tomato in a kid's play. Maybe, but that's the most he could hope for. Even at the height of his fame, he was absolutely talentless. But in Russia, he's a star. Steven Seagal is doing just fine. By the way, he said he was going to go fight for Putin, said he'd go to war for Putin, but somehow never got around to it. So that's the kind of contest they have there. There will always be unscrupulous ghouls willing to sell their conscience for Russian money. For example, take director Oliver Stone. His precious son somehow landed a job at Russia Today, a nice little family business of devil's advocates. And Oliver Stone himself is constantly dedicating some kind of odes to Putin over there. In general, selling your conscience is of course a profitable business. But you'll have to pay for everything in the end. As the Ukrainian oligarch Kolomoisky used to say, life is like a supermarket, but there's always a checkout at the exit. Let me remind you, Kolomoisky is currently sitting in a detention center. So as they say, the checkout is open. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Save on the sedative and some on the sleeping pills, because my good friends report that it is wonderful to fall asleep for my programs. Thank you, friends. You are true friends. In general, with the help of my slight schizoid nature, which I have, I try to convey to you a piece of this infuriating calm. So subscribe, don't forget. And now our segment, Their Customs. I came across this material on Krim.realii. I think it's a Radio Liberty project. And I'm reading it and thinking, well, this is just all of Russia right here. A few quotes. The whole village chipped in for the funeral. The widow of the deceased was offered a tour to Tambov instead of funeral payments. So what happened? There's this woman living in the village of Kazmodemyanovskaya, or more precisely, Old Kazmodemyanovskaya. She has 10 children. She and her husband had 10 children together. And this husband, who also has 2 children from a previous marriage, so 12 in total, decides to go to war because they have some kind of turkey farm there and nothing else in this Old Kazmodemyanovskaya. And 12 children. So this whole story, right, all of this is happening around, and here's an important detail. This whole village, its central feature is the church, the Russian Orthodox Church. And as the saying goes, if God gives you a little bunny, he'll give you a meadow too, or however it goes. If God gives you a bunny, he'll give you a field. Basically, you have a child and somehow will manage to feed them. He couldn't find work, as it turned out, and so her husband goes off to war. Naturally, he comes back in a zinc coffin. They forbid the coffin to be opened, saying he didn't die at the front, but under some other circumstances. They quickly bury him, and this mother of many children doesn't receive any benefits. In general, in Russia, they're supposed to pay 5 million for a situation like this, for someone who comes back a little less than alive. But first of all, there are 10 children, he goes off, gets killed, and they don't receive any payments. On top of that, she went to seek some justice, and the official tells her, "Why did you even bother having kids?" They laugh, ha ha ha, and say goodbye. So in this is all of Russia. Honestly, if Balabanov, the director, hadn't died, I think he would be making a film like Cargo 200, a very heavy, extremely tough film, he'd be shooting hundreds of episodes about all these Russian backwaters right now. How does it happen there? I mean, it's just some kind of madness. Come on, tell me this is made up. No, it's not made up. Right now, all of Russia is like the film Cargo 200. That's it, all of these. And I even went in on purpose to see what that old Demyanovskaya hut looks like. And there's this news report from the funeral. Some wasted guy is blowing a trumpet. There's mud everywhere. For a month there's been mud. They're dragging this coffin through it. Someone in the back is already rubbing their hands, about to start drinking as soon as the funeral's over. A grey, toothless crowd is trudging through the mud for a month, dragging these wreaths with them. They're hauling something. It's just, well, it's like some kind of post-apocalypse. That's basically all of Russia right now, except, of course, for Moscow and the area inside the MKAD. And now we move on to international news. Now is not the time to ask Putin for a ceasefire, says Donald Trump. He said this to journalists aboard his Air Force One plane. And here's the quote. Putin let me down. He's killing a lot of people. And he's losing even more than he's killing. And in response to a question, he said, I don't think now is the time to ask him for a ceasefire, but when the time comes, if I have to do it, it will be tough, said Donald Trump. Yes, once again, he stated that European countries, the allies, should stop buying Russian oil. And quote, this is important. Simply put, if the price of oil drops, Putin will surrender. He will have no choice. He will pull out of the war, said Trump. First of all, a Hungarian representative recently stated that Trump agrees with the special status of Hungary and Slovakia, that they can somehow buy Russian oil and will continue to do so. But the special status is that Hungary and Slovakia have no access to the sea, and supposedly they can only receive this oil via pipeline. But the Czech Republic and Austria also have no access to the sea, yet they somehow found a way. In general, all this talk about special status and so on is just a lie. But even if suddenly everyone in Europe stops buying Russian oil, as of now, in 2025, I checked the statistics, the share of Russian oil in the European Union's imports is 2%. Tell me please how, for what reason would such a small share, even if Hungary and Slovakia stop buying, how is the global price of oil supposed to drop because of that? And sharply at that, with such small volumes. That is 80% of what Putin sells goes to China and India. And for some reason, Trump measures the situation in terms of trade benefits. But dictators think differently. Well, not for some reason. We know why Donald Trump measures things that way. And Trump thinks that Putin does too. Oh no, I'm going to lose 2%. Oh dear, oh dear. Of course, I'll just pull out of the war. Once again, I'm reminding you about the Maduro effect, which was specifically named after the infamous Venezuelan dictator, primarily because his egregious actions and overall behavior serve as a quintessential textbook example of this very significant and profound effect. The Maduro effect is that a dictator, when faced with a choice between losing economically, losing extra profit, or losing anything except power, he always chooses power. That is, he will lose, he will run the country into the ground, let it sink into civil war, hyperinflation, some crisis or another, but he will keep his power, he will choose to preserve his power. So 2%, 5%, only when they really hit India and China hard, that's when it will become clear there just physically won't be any money. But definitely not because of this. And Donald Trump has stated that he is ready to consider other measures to punish Putin. But these steps will depend on whether the Allies stop buying oil from Russia. But again, you're shifting responsibility onto someone else. So fine, tomorrow Hungary stops, for example, the Druzhba oil pipeline is shut down. Okay, let it be so. But if they stop, then what? What will he say next? Oh, there's still someone else, maybe Turkey or some other NATO countries are still buying a little bit. Well, that's just complete nonsense. But regarding priorities and sequence, and Trump, by the way, I'll quote him now, it's very telling. It completely contradicts, is in confrontation with what he's actually doing. It's his own quote. Trump said, I'm ready to take other measures, but not when the people I'm fighting for are buying oil from Russia. Look, it's like priorities, straight up, and sequence. And today there's news that US President Donald Trump refused to approve military aid to Taiwan worth more than $400 million. This happened this summer. the decision is connected to a deal with China. 5 people immediately reported to one of the American publications that the refusal was connected to Trump's attempt to negotiate a trade deal with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Moreover, some note that this decision marks a serious shift in US policy toward Taiwan, which, I remind you, China considers its own territory. And none of the major countries have recognized Taiwan as a separate state. Everyone talks about the one China policy. So it turns out that for the sake of a deal with your main adversary, China, you are betraying your own ally, Taiwan. Well, that's just completely insane. So in that case, you might as well trade with anyone, cozy up to China, and then when China crushes you, you'll still be saying, let's make another deal. What is that even? Well, so you don't doubt Donald Trump's decisions too much or criticize him. There's an idea for you critics. Trump suggested revoking the licenses of TV channels that criticize him. Yes. Well, they constantly portray me in a bad light and still get a license. Trump says, these are the media, that's how they work. The USA, freedom of speech is one of the core values. Wow, they laugh or somehow portray him in a negative light. Well, in general, regarding the fact that I'm not yet ready to put pressure on Putin, here's another Trump quote. This is a terrible war in which more than 7,000 people die every week. But apparently, now is not the time to stop it. Let more people die. I mean, I wonder if they have some kind of contract with the devil over there. Like, a certain number of victims just has to happen. Or how else can this be explained? And of course, Trump, who constantly criticized Biden for his age, calling him Sleepy Joe and so on, claimed that the US resolved the conflict between Azerbaijan and Albania. Well, he said Azerbaijan, but whatever. Azerbaijan and Albania. I think even Azerbaijan was surprised to hear they had a conflict with Albania. Remember that whole ha ha ha, Biden doesn't know what's going on thing? I've said it 100 times already. At 60, it's time for a well-deserved retirement. That's not ageism. That's just reality, including physiological reality. At 60, take a break. If you still feel energetic, go be an advisor. You can be an advisor, share your experience. And here's another little bit for you. Alright, sorry, but I'm going to finish you off today. I came across a short clip from a Donald Trump interview on Fox News. The reporter says to him, Charlie Kirk said there's no such thing as hate speech. Trump says, well, he won't be saying that anymore. You think that's all? Trump expressed hope that the incident with the Russian drones that entered Polish airspace was due to a loss of control. And he said the following. So the reporter directly tells him, Tusk said this wasn't an accident. And Trump replies to him, they were probably disabled. Let's hope that's the case. I mean, what is that even? They're just telling you straight up now? Yeah, it was done on purpose for Kim. I want to remind you that I will gladly express my gratitude to Donald Trump when he imposes sanctions against Russia and ends this war. I'll be the first to go on air and say, Donald Trump. But for now, it all looks like they're coming up with completely far-fetched reasons just to avoid imposing these sanctions at any cost. Alright, you've decided to give Putin this time so he could carry out his summer offensive, but it failed. Zero, nothing at all. They didn't achieve any of their goals, the Russians. Putin has gotten so brazen that he's sending 20 drones into Poland, a NATO country. And Trump says, Putin has disappointed me. And now another member of the dictator club has popped up, deciding to play at being a wannabe nuclear terrorist. So, the dictator club at the moment, that's North Korea, the Russian Federation, Belarus, and Iran. China is bankrolling all of this. So, basically, this is the kind of crowd that's gathered. By the way, Maduro could be added to that list too. And also the smaller-time dictators, Putin's buddies. So Kim Jong Un showed up, unveiled a big drone, it's still unclear whether it's real or not, claiming he's launching some giant drone called Kumsong. And he declared that soon these drones would become an important military asset and that everyone should be afraid, not mock them. Previously, Pyongyang showcased kamikaze drones equipped with artificial intelligence. So now Kim Jong Un doesn't just have rusty tube artillery on the border with South Korea, which he constantly threatens to fire in a single salvo. Now he also has drones. And some experts believe that Moscow is actually helping him a lot in developing this drone program. Who would doubt it? I think China is also providing significant help. And since we're on the topic, this is something the Korean Central News Agency constantly reports. They have a website for it. Since we're talking about it, those who have been watching this channel for a while know that I won't just let it pass by. That Central Telegraph Agency always publishes some kind of revolutionary episodes from Kim Jong Un's life. How he's a hero, how he accomplishes the greatest feats. Basically, any step he takes, even his sneeze, or say when he flicks away a cigarette butt, he's always smoking, always caught on camera. And all of this is presented as some kind of heroic achievement. So, for example, what counts as a feat for him? They call it a revolutionary episode on that site. For instance, increasing the font size on a movie theater sign, or planting seedlings 1 centimeter closer together, or changing the color of a uniform. For the worker, so that we work in a more cheerful mood, in general, everything he says, like paint it pink, everyone exclaims, wow, what a genius, what a great guy. So let me tell you about a new feat, which is called For the Eternal Glorification of the Achievements of Youth. This is an absolutely real text. You can go to that site and check it yourself. Once in September 2015, the respected comrade Kim Jong Un, at a meeting with one of the leading officials, noted that the inscription Heroic Youth should be carved on the front of the dam at the Pakistan hydroelectric power station. And this hydroelectric power station is named in honor of the heroic youth. And he says, here's his brilliant idea. Since in the middle of the dam is the spillway, so here it should say heroic and here youth. That is, not to move one letter or 5 or 3, just so that one word is here and the other is there. And the senior official, looking at Comrade Kim Jong Un, who cares so much about the eternal glorification of the heroic deeds of the youth alongside the dam of eternal time, could not contain his excitement. What a truly brilliant idea, and what heroic youth! So there's no entrance, the doors are closed, and bam! Genius, just like that. But that's not all. He thought some more, walked around. Surely you've seen in photos that around Kim Jong Un there are always a bunch of people writing in little notebooks. That's a must. If you don't write in your notebook, they'll shoot you around the corner. So they all jot down whatever he croaks, wherever he goes, banging on things with a basin. It's just madness. He comes to some factory or plant, grabs a basin, bangs on it, says, there's some kind of sound here, too much plastic, use less plastic. So these are his brilliant ideas. He just goes everywhere poking around saying, Igor, you need to redo something here. And with this dam, that wasn't all either. He thought and then said, right there where the spillway is, you need to depict a torch. It will be the heroic torch of youth. How about that? I mean, I don't know. My head. And of course, this Kim Jong Un type, so they depicted a torch, depicted heroic youth, and Kim Jong Un, in his huge hat and white pants, left satisfied to eat a burger. Well, that's the kind of dictator club he runs. Friends, please take good care of yourselves and also take care of your beloved ones. Please subscribe to this channel and let us actively support our truly brave combat medics. The link is in the description. Wishing us all a peaceful day and, of course, glory to Ukraine.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.